My very first foster cookie, she had like a ton of health problems. And it was like daunting as, having her as my first foster pet, but at the same time, like I felt like I was in good hands. I think that like knowing that there's a whole team there to support you makes it a lot easier. And you're never really like alone.
Welcome to Foster Facts, where we inspire you to foster a pet. I'm Sam from St. Hubert's,
And I'm Nicole from Humane Rescue Alliance.
and today we have Angela, a foster from St. Hubert's. Thank you for joining us today, Angela. Can you tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah. So I started fostering with St. Hubert's earlier this year. So I feel like I'm still pretty new to fostering, but I've had 6 dogs so far, and it's been really lovely to be part of the community and learn more about the dogs and get some experience. So yeah, it's been really rewarding.
Awesome. You mentioned the community. Could you elaborate more on that? Like, are you communicating with other fosters, or do you mean like the foster team? What's the community like for you?
Yeah, I think it's like mostly the foster team and other fosters that I like will run into at events and things like that. I ran into someone at during like when y'all had like your big adoption event, and she was telling me about her foster cats, and it was just like really nice to sort of like talk about the challenges of fostering. And I had Pixie at the time, who was like a very nervous dog, and she was sort of like very like understanding of having a nervous dog and what that was like. And so we like sort of swapped stories at the shelter, which was lovely. And it was just like a really great way to sort of connect with someone who, has been through similar experiences. And of course, like the foster team is so great, and they are so patient with like me harassing them over email with like a million questions. I'm always like, oh, she threw up. Like, is this okay? Like, and so it's a great way for me to like learn more about having a dog, since I've never really had a dog on my own. And so this has been like kind of a great learning experience as well.
So how has communication been with the foster team? Do you usually reach out to them? Is it something that you are able to do via email? How do you usually go about it?
Yeah, I was so like pleasantly surprised by how responsive the team is, just because like I know that you guys are so busy and there's so much going on logistically with so many of the animals. And so like I was impressed with how fast they would respond to like the questions that I had, especially with my very first foster cookie. She had like a ton of health problems that like we didn't really know about um until I got her, and like the vet had to look at her a few times, and it was like daunting as having her as my first foster pet, but at the same time like I felt like I was in good hands because the foster team was really communicative, and they were super willing to like have me bring her in for the vet to look at and help me problem solve. And it ended up being like a really lovely and rewarding and amazing experience. So yeah, I think that like knowing that there's a whole team there to support you makes it a lot easier. And you're never really like alone.
So I know that I usually am asking my friends to foster as much as possible. Do you know anybody that fosters in your life, or are you the only one that's currently fostering?
I don't. I know like friends of friends who are currently fostering, and like coworkers. And I'm always like sort of like I've been pushing my friends to like look into it. Um, Especially my friends who already have dogs, because like a lot of times like a shy dog will sort of like benefit from having a more confident dog in the home. So yeah, I would love to have like more friends who do it, but I've heard from like friends of friends, um, and we all sort of share the same experiences of like it being just like very rewarding and hard, but also great at the same time.
What inspired you to foster?
I had sort of thought about it for a while, and I was like nervous about it just because I didn't really. I mean, I had plenty of experience, like, hanging around dogs for like a short period of time, like growing up with friends who had dogs and all that, and, dog sitting. But I was like nervous sort of going into a situation where I would get a dog where like we didn't, like, nobody really had a ton of information on them potentially. But I think that St. Hubert's was like really accommodating. And I think that like being part of like a foster org that like allows for flexibility with like travel schedules or just like, you know, what you need um is super helpful. And like I think that they're really great about like not pressuring folks to like take on dogs that like, you know, that they might not feel comfortable with, or you know, keeping dogs for longer than would work for their life. And so I think knowing that made me feel a lot more comfortable with starting out, and it made sort of like getting, you know, caught up to speed a lot easier. Yeah.
How have you coped with like saying goodbye? Because you said you had 6 fosters thus far, so um, I think it's safe to assume they all got adopted. So
Yeah. Um, it's so hard because like, so what I've basically done is like I'll foster for a few weeks at a time, just because that's like what my work schedule allows. And well, except for with my most recent foster pup, I was going to keep her until she got adopted, and now she's doing her trial adoption. So it's always like with my first foster dog, it was the hardest, obviously, because I'd never done it before. But I think just knowing that like, you know, they're better off now than when they started, and that they were able to go on a little vacation and sort of like live life in a home um, and have all the comforts of a home, knowing that they'll get adopted quicker that way makes it easier and makes it worthwhile. Because like I think with almost all the dogs I fostered, like they were either adopted when I had them or they were adopted like within a week um, of of you know, being in foster homes. So I think that it's a testament to um, just like how useful it is to have information on them, and how folks feel more comfortable adopting a dog that has spent some time in a home. So I think just knowing that makes it easier. But I definitely still do get like sad about it, especially with dogs that go really quickly. So yeah.
I don't personally have any experience of like meeting an adopter who, let's say, came into the shelter looking for a dog and then didn't find one in shelter and like, um, then decided I'm gonna look at foster dogs. Could you tell a little bit about what that experience is like for potential adopters to reach out to you? What's that process look like?
Yeah. So people reach out to me over email. I think my email's listed on like the Pet Finder website under St. Hubert's and on the shelter website. And normally I'll give them a rundown of what they can expect with the dog. So like basic facts like weight, height, what the shelter thinks their mix is, and general temperament, and also any medical things to watch out for. So like most of the dogs I've had were heartworm positive, so just sort of giving them an overview of what treatment would be like and things like that. And then if they're interested, we usually do like a phone call, and I'll ask them about what their home is like, if they have kids, if they have other pets. Sometimes they'll offer that information, and like that sort of helps me figure out if the dog would be a good fit or not. A lot of times, the dogs I have are better suited to be an only dog in the house. So um, if folks are reaching out and they have other pets, we sort of either have to do a test, or you know, they generally are like less willing to go through all of that, which I totally understand. So yeah, it's like I would say it's pretty informal. It's very much a conversation and trying to figure out what's best for the dog and what's best for their family. And if it's not a match, you know, there's like obviously other dogs, the shelter, or other dogs in foster who would maybe be a better match. And so I just encourage them to like keep looking if it doesn't work out.
I know it's difficult sometimes to discuss who the right match is, or figure that out. How do you usually communicate that with the foster or with the potential adopter?
Yeah, I mean that happens honestly more often than not, just because um I think that people get like a little overwhelmed when they hear the dog has heartworm, and or if the dog has like separation anxiety or things like that. And it's all about like how comfortable the family feels. Like I never want to be in a situation where I'm like pressuring anyone, because it's like obviously it's not going to work out. And so I think that I'm always really upfront about whatever challenges my foster dog might have, and obviously the great parts about them as well. Like I try to be really honest, and that generally sort of like helps people figure out whether or not they're like able to welcome this dog into their family. And then so I haven't really had any issues where people were like really excited about it and I had to sort of like let them down. I think one of the more recent situations was like someone wasn't like ready to adopt until like January, and I was sort of saying like the dogs, we don't really put any dogs on hold, and you can obviously, if once you're ready in January to look, you can obviously look for your dog at the shelter or through the fosters, but like it might be unlikely that like Biscuit would still be available, and obviously she's in her trial adoption, so she's not available. But like I think it's just sort of, it's a mix of like logistics and also what would work for your lifestyle. And I think like if you're honest with them, people generally figure out what like and can make that decision on their own.
You mentioned lifestyle. Fostering seems to fit your lifestyle. Could you just kind of elaborate like your thought process of like how fostering fits into your life and vice versa?
Yeah. Well, I feel super lucky because I can work from home most of the time, and I go into the office like a few times a month, and or I have to travel for work a few times a month. And so it's easy to sort of like structure fostering around that. And I have family near me, so if I had to like step out for a day, like my parents could help watch the pup for a day. And so it's like, sort of easy because I have that support system, and that's an important part of it. Um, and or also like, of course, you could pay for a dog walker or things like that. Um, but I think also I naturally am like a homebody, and I like being at home. And I think a lot of dog owners would say the same, where it's like having, I think if you genuinely like spending time at home and spending time with your dog, then you'd be a great foster. I feel like if you're constantly out, then it would be like a little bit more challenging. And obviously, like there are plenty of people with dogs who have vibrant social lives. So it's not to say you can't, but like I think with just a foster, a lot of the dogs do have separation anxiety, or like they, are in a home for the first time, they want to chew things and all this stuff, or they're not crate trained. And so I think in the beginning, at least, it's like beneficial and easy to like easier on everyone to sort of be home a lot. Or if you live with other people, like I live alone, so like if you're in a relationship or if a family, like just making sure that like someone's home with the dog, at least in the beginning, I feel like makes things easier for everyone. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, same.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like if my friends will be like, "Oh, do you want to like go to the city?" And I'd be like, "No, I literally can't. Like, I have my house to." I mean, like, and I could obviously ask my family to like watch her for a few hours, but I'm like, I'd rather not. Like, but it's always like, what? Like, she'll get adopted soon, and then I'll like see you guys. So it's like, it's not, and obviously it's like a little different from having like a dog of your own, because once you have your own dog, you sort of like know their routine, what they're okay with, what makes them, what they can tolerate and what they're comfortable with. But with a foster, you really, you're sort of in like the info gathering period, like the first few weeks or even months. And it's like beneficial to sort of um, be able to control how long you leave them alone for. I think that's sort of the biggest thing, just because there's so many unknown factors in the beginning.
I'm learning a lot from like talking to fosters that there's a lot of skill building involved in the experience. Like you're learning patience, you're learning like being observant and whatnot. What would you say was like your biggest learning from your experience so far?
I talk about this all the time with my friends and people who ask me about fostering, but like the biggest thing is really just like being okay with a little bit of chaos and like not having control over everything in your life. You know, it's like they might pee on the rug, like they might poop a little bit inside. Like it's like things like that that like are like so maybe like shocking to like a non-dog person. Like I feel like for dog owners, they're probably so, you know, used to this. And then for for fosters too, where it's like it's okay if something gets chewed up, you know, as long as the dog is safe, like things in your house are replaceable. And and it's important to just be flexible with like your routine to match their routine. It's like, you know, if you have to like get up an hour earlier in the beginning, that's just how it has to go. Or you know, if you have to like take the dog out a little bit later at night, that's just how it has to go. It's sort of like being flexible and adapting to the situation, and also like learning to roll with the punches as they come. I think that's like the biggest thing, especially for me, because I feel like I'm a bit of a control freak, and like having foster dogs really taught me to be like, okay, I need to like be okay with, you know, like accidents and chewed up chairs and things like that. It's like it'll all be fine as long as the dog is healthy and safe. Nothing else really matters. And so I think it's a good like life lesson too, where it's like, you know, you learn to be flexible and realize like, yeah, as long as like the important stuff is okay, then everything else is not a big deal. And then just like, you know, the other thing about like, you know, being a foster if you already have a dog, and I'm sure like that learning curve is probably a lot less steep for folks. And yeah, I feel like if you have already had a dog for a long time, you've kind of like seen it all. Um, and so that probably makes them like really good foster, you know, parents, because it's like they're not so phased by things.
Do you have a favorite foster?
Oh, I mean, like I will say Cookie, my first foster, has a special place in my heart just because she's my first and she was so um like I feel like she had overcome a lot. And she was like really fearful of men, as a lot of dogs are. And so it was just like, you know, important for me to like sort of protect her and make her feel protected. And so I think she was at the same time like a ham though. And I think that like when she like earned her trust, she was like a total lap dog, and just like a really special, smart animal. Um, so I think she was like my most, I would say favorite, but like she does have a special place in my heart just because she had been through so much. And I just felt very lucky to like, you know, have her in my life for that period of time.
So, what advice would you have for someone that is interested in fostering?
I think that if you go in with an open mind and take advantage of all the resources that Say Huberts has, then you are setting yourself up for success. And like, I think with the expectation of like it's not going to be easy, um, is important. You know, it's not like every dog is the easiest dog. Um, but it's ultimately worth it because you get to see them go to a loving family and, you know, sleep in a warm bed at night, um, which is like really, you know, why we're all here doing this anyways. And also to say like if you do it and you end up realizing that it's not for you, there's also no shame in admitting that, and there's nothing wrong with that either. And so I think yeah, it's not, you know, it's an opportunity to learn more about yourself and to do something for a really great community.
Yeah, you're totally fine if you don't feel like that is for you. Fostering is not for everyone. So the most important thing is to at least try it out. And if it's not for you, you're not completely committed to it. And you're able to say no. You're able to say, no, I can't do this. And that's totally
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think that like I feel so lucky that like, St. Hubert's is a, a place that exists, it's like so close to me and it's like so convenient and like the team is also just like very accepting and understanding of like what you can and can't handle. And I know that some other organizations are like more maybe less lenient or understanding, and so that is also a thing where it's like if you're thinking about fostering in this area, like that you have a great organization that's like very trusted and reputable.
Thank you for chatting with us today, Angela. We appreciate your time and we thank you for fostering and continuing to foster.
Of course. This was so fun. Thanks for having me on.
This has been Foster Facts with Sam from St. Hubert's
and Nicole from Humane Rescue Alliance.
And we hope this inspires you to foster.